Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond, episode and season at a time. Now, episode 10 of season 9 is upon us. This is Favors. This is from a teleplay by Aaron Shuri. Pronouncing his name correctly after all this time. This is one of those ones that just from the title alone, I forgot what it was about. And watching it, I'm like, oh, it's this one. This is one of those ones that more or less is a filler one, even though it does go a little bit into the lore, although it's one of those things like, yeah, we're not that surprised about it. But it's one of those ones that outside of marathon watching, I probably won't watch again. And that is because it involves Marie. It involves her helping other members of the family. It involves back and forth. And of course, it begins with something involving Ray and Debra's marriage. Now, it's something that's going to come up in any relationship, whether it's just roommates, marriage, or even before. And that is where you put items and should you put them back automatic. Because as we see, Ray has a habit of leaving things just willy-nilly around the house, which as someone with ADHD, I get it. I mean, I'm not going to show it around the room, but I get it. Now for me, it's because I have my own filing system. Now, sometimes I'll just not get stuff put away right away, but I do have my own system. Now Ray, he seems to have his own system, which in his office makes sense, but up top, yeah, they really should communicate more on what goes where. That being said, I side a little bit more with Ray in the beginning incident when he's looking for his Sports Illustrated magazine, because it turns out it looks like it was thrown away because he left it out and didn't touch it. Now, the reason I side with him on this is because he left it on top of the table. Now, I know you have to move stuff when you're eating and all that, but a kitchen table, I find, is one area where you should be able to leave papers, magazines, and all that, and it doesn't get thrown away. Regardless of whether it's school papers, work papers, or something like a magazine, because it's a table. It's meant for stuff like that. Maybe it's because the kitchen table that I had in the house I grew up in also kind of was adjacent to a desk area, so a lot of the newspaper and bill stuff was put there, and that's where my grandparents would always go over like bills and all that. Maybe it's because of that I feel that way. But looking at it, I'm like, really? You had to throw it away? So I side a little bit with Ray on there, even though I do understand Debra's perspective on everything. Now this goes into Ray the next day when him and Robert are going to go, hit a bucket of balls. Ray gets a very heartwarming and heartfelt gift from Robert, and that is a letter from one of the greatest people of all time, Muhammad Ali, who Ray mentions was one of his first sports heroes. And due to meeting him on a call and getting in touch with his management, Robert managed to tell Mr. Ali this, and Ali read the column and he sent this in return. Now, the moment that Ray gets this letter, we kind of have an idea where it's going. But here's the thing, he doesn't leave it on the table and gets thrown away. No, that'd be too obvious. He puts it in a drawer and then leaves. Now what happens with this is that Debra's on the phone with Amy looking for a coupon for some type of facial, and she goes into the drawer, and then she sees it's cluttered, and she takes a lot of stuff out and throws it away. Here is why with this whole incident, after this, I side with Ray. Because in the beginning, when they're having a little tete-a-tete talk, I get both sides, even though I side a little bit more with Ray. I understand Debra's perspective when it comes to Ray doing this all throughout the house. Even though for the kitchen table, I agree that's one place where yeah, you probably shouldn't go that far, Debra. Now here, with this, the way that she goes about it, this is where no, Debra, no. Because here's the thing, if you're going to say it's too cluttered and then just throw stuff away, look to see what it is you're throwing away. Don't just assume everything is trash. Look at everything. Because you know damn well if this was her boudoir upstairs and she was looking through papers, she would check to make sure everything was either important and then put it back in, or go, okay, that's important, that's not important, and then throw stuff away. And then this is that room, maybe double check with Ray to make sure it's not something that he doesn't want to keep. But the fact that she just willy-nilly just threw everything away, kind of disrespectful there. Now I know there's a whole argument thing of, oh, she was on the phone with Amy, she probably wasn't thinking straight. True, but you should still have enough situational awareness to know not to do this. And of course, later on, Ray shows up with Johnny and with Andy, and he's trying to show them the letter, and it's not there. Debra realizes this because she's like, oh crap. And I really feel for Ray, talking all day about the letter, and then now his buddies are making fun of him and the whole thing with it. And I'm just looking at it going, guys, that's not funny. That's mean. And of course, Debra. This is an instance where I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. When Debra gets her comeuppance verbally at the end, I say it's well deserved. Just like it is well deserved whenever Ray gets it. Which I find is interesting is this episode kind of subverts our expectations, because most of the time when we have an episode like this, it's usually Ray trying to hide something from Debra, her finding out, and then him getting a tongue lashing. This time, it's reversed. Which I'd say that's one thing I do love about this episode, is that it subverts everything. Throws the trope on its head, as it were, at least when it comes to these characters. I'm sure there's like another time or two where they've done it with Debra instead of Ray, but I can't really think of one off the top of my head. Most of the episodes that come to mind involve Ray doing this crap. She goes across the street, Debra does, and she tells everything to Marie. Now, you know it has to be a serious situation for Debra to tell Marie this. Well, Marie helps her out and takes the fall and says she's the one that threw it away. So all that anger that would have been directed at Debra initially is now at Marie. But Marie, of course, is not doing this because you're her daughter-in-law, out of the goodness of her heart, because she loves you. She's doing it because she's going to need a favor. And that favor is soon called in when Marie throws Frank's clothes away. And she's like, you're going to have to take the fall for me on this, Debra. And I just love the sight of Frank coming in Marie's pink bathrobe. Just looking at it, oh wow. Now, this is an episode where Peter Ball does have a good amount of energy, so he doesn't really have that like old man timbre to his voice, which I only noticed it while I'm looking at this scene. Like, yeah, he doesn't sound it, but it adds a little bit to it, because it'd be kind of hard to have annoyed Frank like that and it have the same impact when it's old man one. I mean, there's other episodes where that does add a little bit to it, like Jazz Records and the wedding one, but this one, definitely. Could also be that was like the first take energy, and that's why it seems a little bit more like that. And with all this, slowly things unravel. Frank calls it in, because the next day he digs up one of Marie's bushes, brings it in, which the funny thing about this is the fact that Frank is wearing an outfit that was bought for him by Marie, and you can tell by looking at the outfit this is something she would pick out for him to wear, not something he would wear of his own accord. I mean, even his spruced up clothes that we mainly see him wear when they go out on the town or when they go to church, even those ones, it's a different kind of spruced up. This is like golf course spruced up. I mean, he has a comment about it, like he says it's something like a Frenchman would wear. Kind of shows you what type of clothes they are, and based on how he describes them. Now, this is where Debra is caught between a rock and a hard place, and she decides to out herself to Ray by saying the truth, but I didn't do it. Your mother took the fall for me. And this is where I feel that the episode unravels itself, and it becomes a lesser than version of the episode from the previous season where Ray and Debra lied to Marie and she slowly unravels it. Up until this part, I feel it's a pretty decent episode. Wouldn't go on the VHS list, it's not that strong, but it'd be watchable. At this part, this is where I start to hate the episode. I don't know if I'm going to call this a full-on rant yet, especially since, just a little FYI, this is the second time I've had to record this part of it. But close enough, and that is because of the character of Marie. I think I brought it up in a previous episode review at one point. It's been a while since I recorded that one, so I'm just going off my memory of it. But this part of the show is where they start to Flanderize the character Marie. I don't really use terminology like that a lot here, but Flanderize, if you're familiar with The Simpsons, just to summarize it, is when a show has been going on for a while that a character starts to become a caricature of themselves, or it's all the basic aspects of the character. They turn it up to 11, and any growth that character might have had before disregarded, and just the character just to show themselves just for the joke. And by this late in the show's run, that essentially is Marie. She has been Flanderized. You can make the argument that starts like at season 6, definitely into season 7. But last season, you start to see a little bit more, but this season definitely. Now, some aspects of that Flanderization of Marie are in keeping with her character based on the situations that arise, especially as the show progresses through its storylines. You know, her interacting with the soon-to-be in-laws, interacting with the newlyweds, But then there are ones that are like, The one that I've brought up most often is all of her constant digs at Debra and her cooking. We've established in previous episodes of the series that she does agree that Debra can cook. I mean, season 1, it established that she could cook a fish to the point that Frank will eat it. And Marie even stated, even though it's kind of at odds with the thing from the next show, from the next season, that when she cooks fish, Frank won't touch it. So there's one thing that Debra cooks better than Marie, that her husband of several decades will eat, that she can never get him to eat. Unless she's, being facetious, but point remains. And then in other episodes, we've established that she can cook some things that they will eat. I mean, Debra will probably still have to notice the little look from Marie's eyes, but it's there. But then other times it's just gone back and forth, and it's been like, really? By this point in the show's history, that should not even be a joke from Marie. Unless you go with her doubling down and her Mariedom and her really turning into a new version of Nana Barone, the woman she hated. This far in this show, it is the writers reverting to their tried and true formula with Marie. And now, if you're watching just the show as it's going along without rewatching any of the episodes, except maybe occasionally a couple in syndication, that's one thing. And back in the day when sitcoms started, that is what would happen. Early on, it was just like a cinema. You just watch it one and done. That's why, for example, even though I love the classic Universal Monster movies, you watch them nowadays, you notice that there's a very, very loose continuity. I mean, here it's a stronger continuity than that, but it's that same principle, is that with the older sitcoms, you wouldn't rewatch them as much until television became super prevalent. All syndication became stronger, and people watched them more and more. That rewatch thing just grew stronger. But the way they would still do the writing remained the same. Part of which was to be able to show the episodes out of order depending on how they got them in syndication. And like I mentioned multiple times, there were certain episodes of this show that I never saw in syndication, either just because I wasn't lucky enough to see them, or because they were not part of the rotation. Some of them I didn't see until I got these DVDs. And of course, in watching all of the episodes, you notice all this stuff more, and it really hurts the enjoyment. Now, there are certain episodes where that stuff, it hasn't hurt as much, but this is one of the show where it's become more noticeable. It's hurting everything, and in the case of this episode, it really does hurt the final act. Now, what it is with her is finding out Marie's been covering for all these characters, keeping secrets like that for years. Now, I will say this is in keeping with Marie's character. It's just the way it's executed that I look at it and go, yeah, they're Flanderizing her here. Now, Doris Roberts, lovely lady, plays it beautifully. It's a writing thing, not an acting thing. And I gotta separate that thing. And it's definitely not a directing thing. I haven't been writing down who's directing these episodes, but it's the writer and not all that. So I could say that it did get me to chuckle a little bit because of the jokes and how they were portrayed. But looking at it in analysis mode with the whole character thing, it's like, nah, I just don't enjoy it. And that's why I'd say this is a close to rant, but not quite like the other one because of how that one was portrayed. But this one, it's like, oh my god, they really should have ended this with season 8. But then again, this also is the danger of a filler episode, because that's essentially what this episode is. I mean, we don't have 20 episodes to fill. We only got 16. But this is also what happens when the show is long running with 20 plus episode seasons and you start to get into past the season 7 mark. And you start recycling the same stuff, and you got the long seasons. Now I know with the lower seasons you have the opposite thing where you don't have enough stuff happening, but with this one you have too much and just stretches it thin, or as a certain hobbit said, you're like butter script over too much bread. And that's how Marie is, her whole character arc is this. Not to say she doesn't have anything else to do in this season, it's just in this episode in particular, no. A couple episodes after this, I mean, she has more better stuff to do, just like bringing it up. Next episode, I don't know what she has to do. The episode after that, oh yeah, even though it's kind of a minor thing, Taste of Frank, and then of course her whole little thing in the finale, but that's the finale, you know, they're going to bring their A game with all the characters there.